Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. The hour approaches, gold and silver thread shimmer in my candlelit chamber. The figures of three noble women, standing beneath a garden tree in the tapestry opposite, feel as much part of me as the veins in my still, slender hands. One holds a bunch of flowers, one carries a basket of eggs, and the third stretches out her hand to a pelican. Symbol of motherhood, it is said the pelican will pluck its breast and feed the young on its own blood rather than see them starve. I can almost hear the mocking laughter of lives mercilessly cut short. In my dreams, the piercing cries of unquiet souls falsely accused. Grisly husks with popping eyes, whose contortions form a grotesque parody of life. Your time will come. We are waiting. The hour approaches, not if I keep standing. While the rest of my body crumbles, my ears hear well enough. In the early years, wigs lent majesty. Later, they covered the true extent of my hair loss. In my next dream, I enter a hall of mirrors, long forbidden in my palaces. Wigless and mask-free, I recoil at the gray tufts springing from a once noble crown. I'm dismayed by the sunken hollows that pass for cheeks, and my neck is a cavern of worms. I open my mouth to find stumps rattling in my jaw like beaten soldiers. My eyes, once glorious pools of gold brown, are blackened pits. I wake up yelling, and Cat is there to soothe my brow, as she did when I was a child. Yet Cat died years ago. You killed her with overwork. The hour approaches. Only last week, I was indulging in my favorite candies, and my neck was bedecked in a fine ruff, with loops of hanging pearls. Since then, I've barely eaten, though my thirst is unquenchable. Knowing I no longer have the stomach for wine, my maids pour weak ale down my unprotesting throat. That way, I live longer. Pain and melancholy have been my bedfellows for so long. No amount of bloodletting of the body's humors can rid me of them. I must remain upright. I was once a tall, striking creature with auburn hair. Unfortunately, my womanly body was regarded as unfit to rule on account of its corruption, the result of Eve's fall from grace in the Garden of Eden. I had nightmares of a ghastly preacher shaking his fist at me and inveighing against the monstrous regiment of women whose ruling over men was deemed repugnant to nature. However, at the key moment, my imperfect flesh became wedded to the body politic. By some mysterious process, it rose above physical limitations and took on a perfect form. Early on, I learnt to suppress any sign of weakness and use my femininity as a weapon. Born under the sign of Virgo, I was married only to my people. As expressed in my clothing, I sacrificed self for their symbolic love. Over the years, this red-painted cochineal mouth has issued commands, witty rejoinders, sarcastic ripostes. When it suited me, occasional snippets of wisdom. These childlike lips had courtiers running to do my bidding, trembling lest they displeased me and lost their heads. Little by little, I emerged from feebleness, impressing statesmen, and learned men alike. On my progresses through the country, I was said to have the common touch, waiting for hours to catch a glimpse. Ordinary people were touched by my concern for their comfort and welfare. Admittedly, there was precious little to be had in some of the city's hovels. You put on a good show. But the hour approaches. Finally, my supreme moment came. The defeat of the Spanish Armada turned my country's fortunes around. After exhorting the men encamped at Tilbury to victory before they set off in their cannoned ships, I emerged as Gloriana. I may have had the body of a feeble woman, but proved I had the heart and stomach of a king. Perhaps triumph entrenched me, made me more like my father. Loved and feared in equal measures, he bestrode the court like a colossus. A rule which started full of promise grew tyrannical. People feared for their lives. Now you fear for yours. The hour approaches, not if I keep standing. You may wonder how I could love a man who in one foul swoop instigated the destruction of my mother when I was not yet 3. My first brush with death. Even now, I'm unsure whether it was love or fear that drove our relationship. I never spoke to anyone directly about my mother, least of all the king when he lived. My early sagacity may have saved me during my most perilous moments. During my sister Mary's reign, my very survival hung in the balance. I died many times in my mind then. The consummate player, I played for the highest stakes and won by a hair's breadth. Even when I succeeded to the throne, I rarely let my guard down. Those I've truly trusted have been few and far between. But if I outranked them all in terms of flair, capacity, and intellect, I didn't do it alone. I took advice from the best counselors in the land, namely, my dear Cecil, who served me faithfully until he died a few years ago, and whose son now takes his place. Perhaps the older Cecil didn't always please me, but without him, the burden of politics presses heavily. The well of depression, which first opened when I lost Kat, my governess and dear friend, deepened. I miss her. Take those leeches away, and let me have some peace. Nay, none of it feels like winning now. There's nothing triumphant about lying swaddled in a heap of cushions, even if they are in Richmond Palace's private quarters. Our family often decamped here to escape the turmoil of state affairs. Yet this dreamscape of towers and turrets overlooking the river has become a glorified prison. A servant stokes the fire, keeping off the last of winter's chill before spring's sweet arrival, which I won't see. With each passing day, my ladies add more cushions, so when my legs buckle from the strain of standing for hours, no bones get broken. You need to rest and get some sleep, Your Majesty, except to lie down is to face death. Your hour approaches. Ignoring the doctor's wheedling, I remain fixed as the northern star. He and Cecil work in tandem. The smooth politician who isn't a patch on his father, and the oily medic grown greedy on royal patronage. Between them, they will pluck the name of my successor from their childless queen's lips if it's the last thing they do. Of course, I should never have agreed to have the coronation ring removed from my finger to relieve the swelling. I'd not taken it off since my coronation all those years ago, and nothing has been right since. However, I'm adamant that my mother of pearl locket ring remains on my finger for as long as I breathe. What happens next is beyond my control. I trust the women who wait on me will honor my wishes. Only 2 weeks ago, I was able to cast the pain aside and demand my wardrobe mistress clothe me in a fine linen dress and put a ruff round my neck. Enduring the discomfort of hoop and bustle, my face was covered in a thick layer of white lead makeup to cover the pox I was left when I caught smallpox as a young queen. The daubing of my wrists in sweet perfume made me feel almost human. Now sunken in cushions, the chime of bells reaches across our fading fields. I catch the tail end of whispers, infuriated at not being able to hear precisely what's being said. I can no longer demand they tell me or suffer the consequences. The nightmare of that fortress rising above me is upon me again. At the time, the sight of the royal prison almost unhinged me, but a mistress of deception must survive such trials. My elder sister Mary was ruling the country with a rod of iron, and the stakes were kept busy dealing with dissenters. To be so fierce in her beliefs may have been my sister's undoing. When I first became queen, I refused to make windows into men's souls. So long as people conformed to the Anglican religion carved out by my father, they had no need to fear. Yet in your reign, you've ordered more deaths than your sister. Your hour approaches. The very mention of the tower would make the most hardened traitor's bowels shrivel, especially with the threat of torture. As a member of royalty, I would not have to suffer the horrors of Wyatt and his supporters when their rebellion failed. although I distanced myself from all plots to overthrow my sister. Every failure put me in peril. With rumors and counter-rumors circulating of my complicity, I daily faced the threat of destruction. I vividly remember that journey to the tower, passing scenes of horror and desolation. Heads and body parts mounted on spikes at the city's gates displayed the consequence of treason. As we approached, I heard the blood-curdling roar of its lions and turned feverish. To be revisiting the place where my mother had spent her last days, and to have to endure interrogation, seemed beyond me. But I kept my resolve. Any consolation in being given pleasant rooms was short-lived when I discovered the only means of stretching my legs meant having to pass the site of my mother's scaffold. If it came to it, I'd planned on asking for a French sword rather than the cumbersome axe. My mother had made exactly that request before her execution, and then had to suffer the agonies of waiting for my father to grant her wish. Much later, I learnt there was talk of sparing her and allowing her to flee to a nunnery. When the king's love turned sour, he had punished her failure to produce a male heir by getting Cromwell, his clever and formidable politician, to accuse her of numerous acts of treason. They included witchcraft and adultery, including with her own brother. No woman's name was more besmirched. She had been called the king's whore before he made her queen. But she met her death with dignity, making a wise speech to the gathered crowd. In a stroke, she was dead, but not dishonored. I gleaned the details of my mother's final days, long after her death. I dimly recall seeing her as a child. I did not live with her, and when her deliveries of lovely clothes dried up, I sensed something was wrong. In the flickering candlelight, they have coaxed me to bed, where the dark night hovers waiting for my soul. I've always been surrounded by people wanting something. The country's most senior men wait here, watchdogs to a diminishing power. Even a queen cannot hold back death forever. The hour approaches. My physician presses my wrist and clears his throat. Your Majesty, there's the matter of the post-mortem? No cutting, but with great humility. It can be helpful to know the cause of illness for future understanding and inquiries. No. And, the issue of embalming? No. It is usual practice with royalty. No. Of course, Your Majesty. His shoulders slump. He will have nothing interesting to report for posterity. The Archbishop arrives carrying oils. Must speak. Alone. My voice cracks. Everyone to go. In the silence, the Archbishop reaches for my hand. I dreamed of Mary again, I whisper. Which one? Your sister? Or the other one? My cousin. She was the Queen of Scotland. I should never have signed the death warrant. I didn't mean it to be sent. It had to be, Your Majesty. She was complicit in the Babington plot. I tell you, my hand was forced. It was unseemly. I fear God will judge me harshly. Yet, while your cousin lived, you were in constant danger. She was your ultimate rival. But then the manner of her death. Arg! She was not felled straight away. I heard her daw, ran out from under her dress, howling. And then they dipped his nose into her blood. Bitter tears form runnels in my makeup. To go the grave with such thoughts is abominable. What is done cannot be undone, Your Grace. But will I be pardoned for my sins? You will be pardoned and treated as a queen in heaven, as you are on earth. But his voice lacks conviction. Have you thought any more about the most pressing matter? The kiss of his lips to my hand is like the flutter of a bee's wings over a honey pot. They need to know. Who will it be? A vacant tear falls onto the pillow. I have no heirs, so it will have to be Mary's son, James. But I'm damned if they're getting it out of me till I'm ready. They plagued me to marry and produce an heir, although no man ever pleased them. I played along with their schemes, kept them dangling while they sought out the best alliances. My maids were bribed to report the regularity of my monthly bleeds, but in the end, nothing could induce me. When it came to it, I couldn't allow a man to rule over me. Not even Dudley, who I almost loved. At least until our ardors dampened to the warmth of friendship. But how could I forget what happened to my mother when she married my father? And his love turned to hate. Or how my sister's husband deserted her and returned to Spain, leaving her bereft and childless. I played all proposed alliances off against one another, secretly resolved to remain single. No matter that the cushions have been removed. I request the assistance of my ladies to help me out of bed so I can see the tennis court from the window. I remember Dudley, long gone, playing hopelessly to amuse me. He was, however, a fine horseman, and we spent hours riding together. The only time I felt truly free. My chief counselor strides over, touches my shoulder. Your Majesty must go to bed. A knight and leader of the Privy Council he may be, but I will not abide such insolence from a whippersnapper. Little man, you do not use the word must to princes. Your father would not have spoken so. The truth is as bitter as gall. Knowing I must soon leave this life makes him presumptuous. England will have but one queen and no master. The roar of the lion is in my ears. At my coronation, I wore my mother's crown. It fitted me well, lying in bed, strangled by unspoken words. Their waxen faces loom, pressing for the name of my successor. Will it be James of Scotland, Your Grace? My mind flips back, and I'm riding in the barge along the Thames, heading towards the tower again. I keep telling myself I'm a passenger, not a prisoner, but my body has swollen. After my sister, I am the rightful heir to England's throne. My father restored my legitimacy at a grand ceremony in 1544. These men cannot get the better of me. I'm a queen in waiting, popular with the people. I cannot be harmed. Sickened by the boat's motion, I cry out, "Let us pull over so I may recover." The warehouses line the north bank, rising up like monsters from the deep. I've slept in many beds during my life's course, often with maids, occasionally alone, never with a man, though a number tried. The one here is appropriately boat-shaped and sumptuously draped with sea-green curtains, composed of flesh, blood, and mottled bruises. I will the lungs beneath my chest to keep breathing. In and out, in and out. Mere mortal that I am, your procrastinating must end. The hour fast approaches. Jay. The name sticks like a craw in my throat. Did you hear that? The Archbishop asks breathlessly. She can't speak. In air now grown fetid, my finger draws a circle. She's making the shape of a crown. My lady of the bedchamber understands, as does Kat, my old governess, returned to help me in my final trial. Is it to be James, the King of Scotland? Cecil's voice, low and urgent, breaks through the gloom. She's nodding consent, the Archbishop says. She keeps fiddling with the locket. What's in it? Leave it. Kat covers my hand. No man dare argue. In such moments, women protect their own. The ring has 6 rubies, and the letters E and R. The letter E has diamonds set over it, and the R is enameled in blue. But the ring bears a secret. Within the hinged head lie 2 miniature portraits, one of myself and another of an unnamed woman wearing a French hood. I imagine their gasps on opening it. She bears the look of... Kat will likely puff out her chest and tell them there was never any doubt she was her father's daughter. You only had to look at her. But God bless her, she was her mother's daughter too. Lingering on the threshold, my soul must finally meet its maker. I hear Kat's voice loud and clear. Open the windows so the queen can smell the fresh cut grass. It's being pecked at by a rook. No more prevarication. My hour has come. A thin tether of domesticity. My new wife adopted a rescue dog that came into my surgery for a simple vaccination. Typically, I try to keep a professional distance, but she fell in love with the shaggy mutt, and I was trying to be a good father to her son, little Nate. She called the dog Catch. What fun it was to make Catch fetch. Fetch, catch, fetch, catch. It was a big tease. Faking throw ball. Making that big dog lope about looking for the ball. And one day, my stepson joined in the fun. Fetch, catch, he cried, swinging his arm in that clunky toddler way. Catch followed the arc of the make-believe ball through the air, but suddenly something snapped in that canine mind. and the thin tether of domesticity severed when the dog realized it had been fooled by a small boy. Every dog is a wolf. Nate, a naked ape, didn't have a chance. I am a vet, and normally I am unaffected by blood and suffering. But this was different. My new wife lost her mind. And in that moment, I operated on a primal level of panic. I wrapped the gore in a plastic shopping bag and rushed Nate to the hospital, where the ER doctors stitched up his torn face like a patchwork quilt. But they were unable to reattach Nate's mangled arm. If only I'd been a few minutes earlier. If only I'd packed the arm in ice. I am a veterinarian, for God's sake. I am also a goddamned fool. I got back to the house that night, and first thing, I dragged the dog out behind the shed. The dog was innocent, I suppose. It was my new wife that brought the brute into our lives. Pitiful yellow eyes, whimpering remorse, the dog crouched low, and I blew its sorry brains out with my hunting rifle. Grief swells until it shrouds the entire universe in gray. Then it shrivels down to its hard black core and buries itself in your heart, where every other beat is a pulse of anguish. With grief comes anger, blame, and remorse. My new wife was a mess. The wounds healed, but Nate's face was puckered by scar tissue into a permanent rictus of surprise, and the shocking angularity of his right shoulder was a constant reminder of horror and loss. I spent a fortune on plastic surgery, which moderated the facial disfigurement so that Nate could move around in public without attracting too much attention. And when Nate was old enough, his prosthetic limb, the training wheel arm, was upgraded to a sleek, robotic carbon fiber contraption that he controlled by twitching the muscles in the shoulder. He was a passable imitation of a teenager, but joy and hope seemed absent. Sports and clubs and friendship too. He spent hours alone in his bedroom. The one-armed boy, her damaged son. Nate's mother was immobilized by grief, which soon turned to irreversible and ever-deepening depression. She grew thin and weak, listless and atrophied. Her face became an ashen mask. She became a passenger, a burden, useless to me. And she avoided the boy. She couldn't bear the sight of his missing limb. She couldn't bear the daily reminder of her terrible error. Finally, with her maternal and spousal duties fully abandoned, she one day went to collect the mail from the mailbox at the end of the driveway and never returned. Months later, her skeletal remains were found by a road cleaning crew on a quiet stretch of I-95. In her pocket, they found a picture of little Nate, pre-accident, still precious and whole, with his right arm draped over the neck of the dog. Madeline Marks, a comely senior at the high school, invited Nate to the school prom. It was an improbable match, but I was desperate to see Nate achieve a modicum of happiness, independence at least. So I said a little prayer and hoped for the best. Perhaps she was one of those do-good angels who tried to make everyone feel included, or who are blind to disablement. But something felt wrong. The children at Nate's school were relentless bullies, tortured Nate with minor humiliations. My suspicions were substantiated later that night when Nate returned home early, alone, in tears. He was carrying his prosthetic arm like a piece of salvaged wood. It was covered in filth and looked badly damaged. His jacket sleeve was torn. Someone had ripped the prosthetic limb from its exoskeletal shoulder mount. I intercepted Nate, got a slice of the tawdry story out of him before he stormed up to his bedroom and slammed the door. Evil sometimes wears a pretty face. Nasty Maddie, bad girl Maddie, I ask you as a man, what would you have done? From grief to anger, from anger to vengeance and retribution. We are talking of a short journey. The next day, Maddie's mother phoned and screamed groundless accusations at me. Where was Maddie? What did Nate do to her precious daughter? Nate was a schemer, a druggie, a weirdo, a monster. I was worse. I created the monster. It was true. This was as much my fault as anybody's. As a father, I was a failure. Not that I ever wanted the role. The police arrived with a warrant. They confiscated Nate's computer, and they asked him a lot of questions, which caused the scars on his face and neck to flare up bright crimson with suppressed shame and rage. The police were persistent. This strange-looking boy with the disfigured face and the articulated claw hand was their prime suspect. But Nate knew nothing. Maddie left him and went off with an older boy. She was probably on the lam in Augusta or Portland. It was a lewd prank to impress a clique of friends. It was a high school hazing, a warped Stephen King dare. Onlookers, teen boys and girls, laughed at Nate as he tried to pull the prosthetic from out of the toilet bowl, where Maddie's boyfriend had jammed it into the trapway. Nobody helped. The police detective, a pit bull man, took notes. A prank would not account for Maddie's absence. Something more sinister had happened to her, he was certain. They'd check Portland, they'd check Augusta. But I could tell, right from the get-go, they were focusing their biased and ignorant investigation exclusively on Nate. The detective even started on me. What was I doing on prom night? Had I seen the girl, Maddie? Had I aided and abetted in a crime? Newspaper reporters were sniffing around, rifling through the trash. A TV station sent a van over and parked outside looking for an interview with Nate or me. Someone threw a brick through the front window. Someone fired a gun at the garage. Maddie's mother hissed at me like a cat outside the supermarket. Strangers spat at me in the street. My clients canceled appointments, and my staff at the surgery resigned. Maddie's body parts were mostly found strewn about the woods near our house, along the riverbank, and wedged between rocks on the trail behind the nearby transfer station. Maddie's head was impaled on a railing fence near the town pond. With her remains discovered so close to our house, it only intensified the scrutiny. I kept Nate inside, fearing a lynching. Not that he had any interest in going out. Where would he go? What would he do? An itinerant was discovered living in a squalid camp in the woods on the south side of Bald Mountain. A creep, a hermit. His hovel was part hidden by a cave and a clump of gnarled hemlock, and the nearby forest floor was surrounded by scraps of animal fur and bones, grisly, rotting offal. He was a wild man in his 50s who'd been stealing from cabins and campsites, trapping animals in the woods. He'd been living in the woods for perhaps 2 years. A charred piece of Maddie was found in his campfire. Case closed, but not completely. I waited a little while until things had died down a bit, until Nate seemed capable of grasping my concept properly. He seemed slow to understand, then outright confrontational. Nate was repulsed by the idea. What kind of madness was this? His own stepfather? Did I not understand how truly fucking evil this idea was? What had possessed me? What kind of man would do that? It was wrong. It was sick. He wanted nothing to do with it. He would denounce me. I confiscated his phone. He tried to leave the house, and I was forced to fight him to the living room floor, where I subdued him with sprayed triple drip that I used at the surgery to anesthetize livestock. When he came to, he was unyielding. There was no arguing with him. He would not see reason. I explained to him that it was too late anyway. In for a penny, in for a pound. There was no going back now. But eventually, I gave up arguing. Better to seek forgiveness than permission. I dosed him up for surgery. Once Maddie's arm was properly unfrozen, it turned out to be a pretty good match in terms of skin tone and musculature, though perhaps a bit smaller than I would have liked. Her blood type was compatible with Nate's, and the nerve endings and blood vessels were clean and undamaged. It would be a microsurgery marathon, but I was confident that I could perform the operation without any help. Perhaps I was never meant to be a parent. Nate seems to have adjusted reasonably well, though I don't see much of him these days, because it's best to keep him locked in his bedroom. Such rage in one so young. It can't be the arm, because to the casual observer, it looks quite passable, though a bit pale. And I know the operation was a brilliant success, because he recently hurled a can of Coke at me from the far side of his room and nearly knocked me unconscious. So vicious and accurate was the throw. Perhaps the melancholy is hereditary, but perhaps it's that twisted, scarred, and scowling face. Who knows how that might affect a young person? He only has one expression, and I sense that it makes him unfit for an independent life. Nate has one friend, another loner type, a gaming buddy called Jeremy, who'd came around once to help Nate fix his computer. He and Nate had some kind of falling out. It occurs to me that Jeremy has a very passable smile, forever haunted. I know. I have to run, get away, but as yet, haven't the courage. I am in the corner, huddled, naked. I'm more colorful than any clothes I could wear. I'm red, black, purple, and blue. Battered and bruised, my crime inquiring about his whereabouts. Together for 6 years now, our beautiful son asleep upstairs, and I'm not entitled, according to him, to ask him anything. I am not and never will be the boss of him. I'm replaying my actions and conversation over and over again. He's never raised his hand to me before. Verbal abuse, yes. Threats, yes. But never until now, connection physically. I realize this didn't just spring up out of nowhere. For weeks now, it's been building money worries, new baby, never having lived together before. He can't handle it. He can't even handle the thought of being a dad. He acts as if he hates him. I believe he's jealous of him. Maybe it's just a one-off, I tell myself. I wipe my nose, and my hands are covered in snot, tears, and blood. I have to get up. I have got a baby to look after. He can't see me like this. I need to shower. I can wash away the blood, but never will I be able to wash away the shock and fear I felt. He hasn't gone near me since the birth, and last night, with the first punch, his erection appeared. It grew the more he hit me. The names he called me, the force he used. I can't tell my parents. They didn't want me to move in with him in the first place. I'm 19. I had told them, an adult and a new mom with a fella that adores me. I'll be fine. How can I now go back and tell them they were right? It's now 4 months on and middle of summer, and I'm clad in a woolly, oversized sweater which hides a multitude. He's got clever and hits me in places which can be hidden from everyone, but he doesn't hide his beatings from his son. In fact, I think he waits until he's asleep in my lap sometimes to start. He knows I'm more afraid of him hurting him than me. Yesterday, something in me snapped. I'm not taking any more. My son's not taking it anymore. We both deserve better. In walks the oppressor. I usually sit waiting to suss out his mood before I do anything, but not today. I carry on reading a book. Paul's asleep in his cot, oblivious. He glares at me, walks into the kitchen, and comes storming back. Where's my tea? You know what time I get in at, and my tea and dinner should be already prepared, sitting on the table, waiting for me. Paul and I have already eaten, and since the last time I prepared food, it ended up all over me. And the kitchen, I've decided I won't be doing that anymore. His face is incredulous. In any other situation, it would be hilarious, actually. Even now, it's hilarious. I start to giggle and can't stop. Nothing could have stopped it. Have you finally lost the plot? Stupid bitch. What's funny? I stand up and ask him, for once can we take our fight into a different room and let the baby sleep in peace? I start walking before he gets a chance to respond. He comes in arm raised and stops midair as he catches sight of the carving knife in my hand. I slice and only succeed in ripping his shirt. He starts apologizing, the only time since the first time, tells me he loves me. He'll never hit me again. I can feel my resolve breaking and need to get to my son. I start walking and he grabs me. The knife clatters to the floor. I knew there and then I was going to pay for this. Big time. He goes in and wakes up. Paul puts the disturbed toddler in his walking chair and hands him the knife. I beg him to take it off him, but he walks over to me and spits in my face. I tell him I'll do anything he wants, that I love him, but just take the knife off the baby. He pushes me on my knees and makes me go on all fours and rapes me while my son gurgles and plays with the knife. Not a scream or whimper do I make, but hum and make soothing noises so Paul won't get alarmed. When he's finished, he gets up and urinates on me and Paul. I've never known such hate and haven't experienced it on the same level since. When he leaves the next day, I pack up all his stuff and our stuff. I ring my parents and beg them to get me out of there and plead with them, can I come home? I hear my mother sobbing in the background, and my dad says, "Darling, we've been dying for this call. It killed us the last time when you asked us to leave and not come back. We'll be there right away." I never told them about the rapes, too ashamed, but the latest beatings were obvious. You only had to look at me. The drive home is terrifying and soothing at the same time. I knew I'd done too much growing up. I could never go back to the girl that lived with Mammy and Daddy again. I wasn't the same girl. He killed himself in a prison cell. I didn't send him there. It was an awful crime committed on someone else. It was a twisted relief, knowing Paul would never have to see him, and a twisted sadness because he'd been my first love. And for a long time, I adored him. Time and life move on. Scars heal. Hope returns. But your past is always your past. And a part of me will be haunted forever. Out for the count. A knock, knock, knock came from the top of his coffin lid. Eckhard Freud closed his eyes and gritted his teeth. One day's sleep was all he wanted. One day of peace. That damn boy would jump at the shadows of his own bat wings. Eck pushed up his coffin and glared at the boy, not even deigning to sit upright. He kept his arms crossed over his chest. Yes, Dunstan. What is it? Dunstan Greaves stood there in his PJs, holding a blanket. He shifted from one foot to the other, looking awkward. I heard a noise, Eck. Eck's eyebrows rose. He tried to keep his voice even. A noise? You woke me, Count Freud, from his slumber for a noise? Well, what kind of a noise was it? A vampire hunter coming to stake me? The village populace come to burn me? What? Dunstan looked at his feet. He prodded the floor with his toes. Well, no. It was a different kind of sound. A spooky sound. A spooky sound. A spooky Eck sat up. You're an undead creature of the night, Dunstan. You're over 300 years old. And I turned you when you were 24. You can't be afraid of every creak and groan in this old manor. And most importantly, you can't be waking me whilst I'm getting my sleep. Dunstan sagged. He looked miserable. "Kay, sorry." Eckhard likewise deflated. Who could say no to those hypnotic eyes? They made him feel like a monster. Tell me, Dunstan, what can I do to make you feel better? Dunstan brightened a little. Well, I guess, maybe, I could sleep in with you today, Eck? He paused before hurrying on. Just for today, I promise I'll sleep in my own coffin tomorrow. Eckhard closed his eyes. Beelzebub, give him strength. Fine, fine. But just for today, I swear to the old ones that this is the last time, though. The boy started to scramble in. Oh, thanks a lot, Eck. It makes me just feel safer, you know? I can sleep soundly, knowing you're there to protect me. Eck scooched over to the far side of the coffin. The casket maker hadn't constructed it with two bodies in mind. All right. But don't hog all the duvet. You've got your own blanket there. And leave me some of the pillow, damn it. The boy snuggled down. His breathing slowed. Thanks, Eck. You're the best. G'day, buddy. Eckhard's grumpy exterior melted a tiny bit. He grumbled. Well, it's all right. Good day, Dunstan. Dunstan jumped, propping himself up on his elbows. Did you hear that? Eckhard groaned. One day, one single day, that was all he asked for. Sleep, he groaned. Lemme sleep. Dunstan remained half upright, listening. He raised a finger in the twilight of the closed coffin. A heavy thud and scrape came from beyond the casket's walls, as if on cue. That, Eckhard frowned. He blinked away the sleep in his eyes. Yes, he had heard that. A bat of worry fluttered its wings in the dusty corridors of his ancient heart. Could Dunstan's paranoia be hitting the stake on the head for once? Was it? I don't know. Eck, I think it's what I heard earlier. There's somebody else in the house. There's something in here with us. That woke him up faster than a snort of garlic. Could it be vampire hunters? He thought all the hunters had gone extinct and passed from reality into folklore and legend. He didn't believe any existed anymore. But if they did, he ought to do something. He stirred, starting to sit upright. All right, he said, running a hand over his face. You wait here, boy. I'll check it out. If there's trouble, fly away. Be careful, Eck. Eckhard pushed open the coffin lid. He slipped like liquid through the gap, letting it close without a sound, sealing the boy safe inside. Outside, in the dark, thanks to those fancy blackout blinds, Eck's senses adjusted to the house. He sniffed the room, eyes glinting like a cat's. He attuned himself to the very particles of air as they floated around him. Something shifted down the corridor. A faint blue glow throbbed. A thud, a scrape, and a moan whispered along the floorboards. Eck's teeth extended, and his sharpened nails itched for a fight. Well, bathe him in holy water. Dunstan was right. Could you say the boy was crying wolf when against all odds there was one? Sometimes the boy had unfounded fears, but this time his intuition had proved to be an ally. Eck owed him an apology if he lived to see the moon's light again. Lighter than the motes of dust drifting in the gloom, he stalked towards the disturbance. A man was standing in the grand foyer, his back turned. He had an eerie, ethereal shine and swayed from side to side. His ripped shirt dangled from him in tatters. He appeared to be speaking to someone. A human? Foolish, foolish. Eckhard pounced. The man's body offered no resistance, and Eck passed through him as though he weren't there. Cold electricity crackled over Eck's skin as he pierced the stranger's form. Eck thudded into the wall, head spinning, bewildered. He looked up at his failed would-be victim, bats fluttering in his vision. The misty surface of the man's skin strode in the gloaming. He looked down upon Echehard, eyes furious, face drawn in a rictus of mourning. One side of his neck was a gaping black hole from which ink-black blood had gushed and stained both skin and cloth. He raised a hand and pointed at Echehard, wailing, "Uh-oh." Echehard had killed this fellow the other night. He'd brought him back to their place as a late-night snack. It wasn't good for his digestion, but sometimes you had to indulge. Other ghosts apparated on either side, like unwhacked whack-a-moles. "I am Shane Abbott," moaned the ghost, "and you have wrongfully killed me. I have woken the others too." There were many. Other voices joined in a choir of the dead. Oh, so many. Oh, sweet Je. Ah, oh, sweet Nosferatu. Wasn't that a kick in the blood-sucking teeth? The only way to get rid of ghosts was with an exorcism. And the only way to have an exorcism was with a priest. What vampire in their right mind would invite a priest into their home? They could spritz you with holy water or brandish a crucifix at you. And if the holy man did get rid of the hauntings, what then? They'd, "Ooh, bless the place." Dunstan's voice called out from the other room. "Eck? Everything all right?" "Dunstan, my boy," said Eck, not breaking eye contact with the head ghost. "I don't want to sound all aflutter, but I have bitten off more than I can suck here. We ought to contact the council. We need to vampire outside help. A life of regret." When Raj had stealthily installed the iSpy 200 Vision Plus device on his wife's prescription glasses 2 weeks ago, he had no idea the device would enable him to watch and hear from her perspective, in a way, relive her last day alive. It was this morning Raj had received the Blue Dart courier with the pen drive containing the recording of the last day of Mira's life, her first and only day of wearing her glasses with the iSpy installed, just before the horrific car accident in which her car had been hit on the rear by another fast-moving vehicle. The police believed it to be a truck or a bus. Mira's Ford Endeavor had spiraled out of control and plunged into the river beside the road where she had drowned before she could be rescued. When her car had been pulled out, Raj had collected her things, including her glasses, and sent them to the technical facility of the iSpy Corporation in Mumbai, where the team had extracted the audio and video recorded on the device and mailed the file to Raj on a pen drive along with a hefty check for their services. Taking a deep breath, Raj poured himself a glass of Sauvignon Blanc, which also happened to be Mira's favorite wine, for he needed his courage for what he was about to do. 3 large gulps and soothing warmth in his throat equipped him the nerve to plug in the pen drive and click on the folder dated July 24th, 2021. Wondering what their 16-year-old daughter Hina would think of this blatant breach of his wife's privacy. Raj pressed the play key. The world came into focus, with dainty hands, with black painted fingernails, placing the glasses over a nose. The camera panned to the left and focused on the other side of the bed, where a portly man lay sleeping, with his mouth slightly agape. Raj watched the laptop screen, with his heart racing, as Mira leaned closer and kissed his bearded face before wrapping her gown around her body and proceeding towards the bathroom. He paused and watched the affectionate gesture again, frowning. He must have been fast asleep, because he didn't remember his wife kissing him in the past 3 months. Not since his near-fatal heart attack. Was there a corner of her heart that still loved him, even though she was cheating on him? Raj shrugged the thought away, and taking another sip of the wine, resumed playing the video. In the bathroom, Mira placed her glasses on the bathroom sink while she proceeded to undress and step into the shower. For a few moments, Raj hated himself for lowering the laptop screen. This wasn't why he was spying on his wife, and somewhere in his heart, he knew he was violating her privacy after she was dead, which made it worse. But then he lifted the screen once again to watch his wife bathing, still as glorious at 43 as she was 20 years ago when they had first met. Raj couldn't credit her genes for her fitness levels, for her 2 sisters were both overweight and looked 10 years older than their age. The credit was all Mira's. She loved swimming in the clubhouse and sweating it out in their backyard with her 10-kilogram kettlebell. With a twang of shame, Raj glanced at the tires of fat around his waist, which made it impossible to see his feet without leaning over. Maybe he deserved a wife who cheated on him. After all, he had completely let go of himself over the past 10 years. A factor, his doctor proclaimed, had contributed to Raj suffering a massive heart attack at 46, despite having no history of heart disease. Mira put on her glasses as she emerged from the bathroom and got dressed in a navy blue suit for her office meeting. Each Monday, she had a meeting with her boss, a man she detested but tolerated because it allowed her to provide for her family. As she combed her long, wavy hair and effortlessly styled them into a chignon, Raj caught his own reflection in the mirror on the chin behind her, a middle-aged, unshaven, unemployed man perched on the edge of the bed, wistfully watching his beautiful and successful wife, who was everything he wasn't. Did he feel resentful towards her? Was it her fault she had done well in her life, while he had simply failed at everything he tried? Was it love that still kept them together? Or was she only with him for the sake of their teenage daughter? "I'm going to be late today," she said, without glancing at her husband. "Today's the last date for the submission of the RFP response, and Kana would expect me to finish it before I finish my day." "How late?" he asked desolately. "Late," she said firmly, giving him an icy stare. Eat your dinner if I'm not home by 8. I hope you can manage to feed yourself and Hina. It was more of a statement than a question. Raj heaved himself from the bed with much effort. Let me get breakfast started. I'll eat in the office. Anyway, I can't eat anything before my Monday morning meeting. You know that. Through the camera, Raj saw his own sorry figure as Mira grabbed her purse and laptop bag and left the room without another word to him. She paused by their daughter's room, and after a perfunctory knock, opened the door and stepped in, closing the door behind her. Raj remembered sticking his ear to the door, eavesdropping on their conversation. But all he had heard were some muffled noises, as though they were deliberately trying to keep their voices down. It had started 2 months ago, when one night, Raj had woken up to find his wife's side of the bed empty and loud arguing noises coming from their daughter's room. As he had tiptoed to Hina's room, he heard his wife yelling, "Do you know how old you are? I'm 16. I'm not a child anymore. You're just 16. You're still a child. You cannot do this." "I can and I will," the daughter had argued back. "I forbid you." And on the argument had fired back and forth between mother and daughter until Raj had stepped into the room and both had frozen and then sputtered an apology for waking him up. Docilely, Hina had apologized to her mother, and Mira had embraced her daughter. But Raj had sensed that it was just a temporary ceasefire owing to his heart condition, and the real issue between mother and daughter was not yet resolved. When he had probed about the subject of the argument, both had dilly-dallied without giving him the truth. While he appreciated their concern for his health, Raj wanted to be part of important discussions affecting their daughter, and wasn't happy with being left out. Now he watched keenly as Mira stood facing their daughter, Hina, who was still in bed, as it was early for school. "Good morning, sweetheart," Mira said warmly. Hina, a scrawny 16-year-old girl with crazy curly hair, mumbled a good morning from under the covers. "I was leaving for office. I wanted to talk to you before I go," said Mira, sitting on the edge of the bed. Hina sat up on the bed, rubbing her eyes. "Yes, Mom. Is everything okay? Is Dad okay?" Raj's heart swelled with happiness at the concern he heard in his daughter's voice for his health. While not the most affectionate or expressive person in the room, Hina did show her love occasionally through her gestures. Mira sighed deeply. "Your dad's fine. He's recovering, you know. We can't let anything stress him out." Raj thought Hina looked away guiltily at her mother's words. "You know what I'm talking about, right?" Mira pressed on. "Yes, Mom? Have you met him again? Outside classes?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Of course I'm sure, Mom." Mira's gaze dropped to the bed cover, and her delicate fingers smoothed out the covers. "I know you went to his house on Friday." Hina's expression was that of a deer caught in the headlights. I went to his house to say goodbye," she stammered. Mira's sigh was deep and audible. "I want to believe you. Really, I do. but I can't. You've broken my trust, Hina. Hina was now almost in tears. I'm so sorry, Mom. But really, I had gone to his house for the last goodbye. I'll never see him again, except at school, of course, where I can't avoid him. Good. You know, once your dad is better, we'll do something to fix this problem permanently. Hina's ears perked up at the suggestion. What do you mean, Mom? I mean, there's more we can do to fix this problem. I don't want to do anything right now because of your dad's precarious health. But once he's better, at this, Hina threw the covers and jumped out of bed. You can't punish him, Mom. It was my fault, as much as his. Promise me you won't do anything. Mira rose, placing the strap of her laptop bag across her chest. I'm not promising anything, sweetheart. Let's talk about our options in a few weeks' time. Until then, if you see him again outside class, I'll know right away. Hina stared at the wall clock behind her mother's head. I won't see him like I promised. Raj's mind galloped to process the new information he had learned about his daughter. She had a boyfriend. Apparently, a boy from her class. Was that the reason for the strife between his wife and his daughter? Or was there more? He wondered, as he fast-forwarded the part of Mira's day where she attended her Monday morning meeting with her boss and worked in the office. Everything about the exchange surprised him because he was the overprotective parent, constantly worrying about every little thing regarding their daughter, while Mira was more of a liberal parent who allowed Hina to experiment and even encouraged mistakes, even though he thought it inadvisable for young people to date before 18. What Hina was going through was completely natural and expected. Why had his wife freaked out so much on finding out about Hina's boyfriend? Resuming the video from the point where Mira got into her Ford Endeavor after leaving office, Raj watched keenly as she checked her freshly applied lipstick in the rearview mirror and used her dainty hands to smooth her hair and tuck some wild strands behind her ear. She turned on the ignition and began driving in a direction opposite to where their home was located. When the police had questioned Raj about where his wife was returning from that fateful day, he had surmised that perhaps she had taken a detour to the market to shop for something for their daughter's upcoming 17th birthday. And maybe she had liked something, but wanted to discuss with her husband before buying the gift. Raj wasn't quite sure what had prevented him from sharing his suspicions with the police that his wife was probably having an affair and was returning from a rendezvous with the other man. It was probably as a token of respect for their 18-year-old marriage and consideration for their daughter that Raj had kept his suspicions to himself. With rapt attention, Raj watched the curve of the river, hugging the road, and the familiar city roads zipping past the fast-moving vehicle. As he expected, the car moved through the South City Market and towards the residential area next to it. Mira parked the car behind a dented Mahindra XUV 500, parked in the parking space, and stepped out with her purse over her shoulder. She rummaged through her purse for something, and apparently not finding it in there, she leaned into the car, opened the glove compartment, and extracted a pepper spray. With the pepper spray ensconced in her purse, she marched to the front door and rang the bell. The pepper spray confused Raj. If she was going to meet her lover, he'd have expected her to be rummaging in her purse for something other than a pepper spray. The heavy brown door was opened by a balding man with horn-rimmed glasses on his nose. Mr. Segal? Hina's physics teacher? Was Mira having an affair with him? She detested the man and had even argued with him over some marks after the first term examination results. Nothing made sense. The man's face deflated on seeing the visitor. Raj thought Segal looked shocked to the point of being afraid on seeing Mira. Surprised? Said Mira. Why? Were you expecting my daughter? I don't know what you're talking about, the man stammered. I know you've been having a romantic relationship with my underage daughter. The man inhaled deeply. I have no idea what you're talking about. I have proof. Those letters you wrote to her. I found them, and I immediately knew they weren't written by a boy, but by a grown-up man. How could you do this? You're at least 50 years old. You disgust me. The man's nostrils flared with fury. Listen, you can't come to my doorstep and accuse me of something I haven't done. You need to leave, he said, beginning to close the door. Mira's ring-studded hand stopped the door from closing. I am leaving, but not before I warn you to stay away from my daughter. If you try to talk to her outside the class again, I'm going to inform the police. The only reason I haven't already contacted them is that Hina begged me. She begged me to let it go, and... Mira paused. The man was peering from behind the half-closed door with his narrowed eyes. And what? Mira sighed deeply. And nothing. I'm not calling the police right now because of my husband, who is ill. I don't want him to know about this mess. But if you contact my daughter again, I'll have no option but to call the police. Raj's world was spinning around him. So this was what the mother-daughter arguments were about. Now that he realized what had happened, it made perfect sense. Why then had his mind jumped to the conclusion that his wife was cheating on him? And the reason Hina was arguing with her mother was that she had somehow found out about her mother's affair? How could he have been so naive to jump to a disturbing conclusion based on a mere happenstance? The only thing Mira was trying to do was protecting their daughter from the pedophile and protecting her sick husband from the stress of the situation. The sudden onset of guilt at suspecting his innocent wife of cheating on him and violating her privacy made Raj sick in his stomach. Having half a mind to close the laptop screen, Raj continued watching what was probably the last hour of his late wife's life. Soon, she would be on her way back home, and her Ford Endeavor would be hit on the rear by a vehicle that would send her spinning towards the river and to her death. Things seemed to be moving in slow motion as Mira delivered the final threat to the physics teacher, and leaving him with his jaw hanging, reversed her car out of the driveway, turning around towards her home as she drove on the highway next to the river. Raj kept his gaze on her rearview mirror, his heart racing. If he was lucky, he'd be able to view the plate number of the vehicle that had hit his wife's car and hand over the evidence to the police. With his heart in his throat, Raj watched several large vehicles on the highway approaching his wife's car, and some of them overtaking it. Resisting an urge to tightly shut his eyes, Raj continued watching the last few minutes of his wife's life. What must be going on in her mind at the time, he wondered. He regretted not telling his wife how much he loved her and how much he appreciated her supporting the family, especially since he had lost his job. He regretted every harsh word he had said to his wife, every missed opportunity to appreciate her, each occasion he could have been kinder to her. Thinking of their arguments, and every time he had raised his voice at her, made him run with shame. Was this his punishment for not living a purposeful life? For not living deliberately, but just drifting along the currents of everyday life? Raj sat bolt upright as he saw a vehicle he recognized approach his wife's car from behind. This couldn't be right. Why was the man following her? Raj knew the answer to the question a split second before he saw Segal ram his Mahindra XUV 500 into his wife's car and send her spinning towards the river. Water engulfed the world around him, and he saw the bubbles of air escaping his wife's mouth and nose as the water pressure shattered the windows and rushed into the rapidly sinking car, drowning its only occupant. At some point in time, the glasses drifted away from Mira's face and through the camera. Raj saw his wife's face for the very last time. Some of the guilt that Raj felt for violating his wife's privacy was washed away with the knowledge that he now had the evidence to bring his wife's murderer to justice. Wiping the tears from his eyes, Raj closed the video file and picked up the phone to dial the police. Bernice. Theme parks are the best. The roller coasters rule. But I didn't want to go into the House of Horrors. It looked dark and creepy, and I knew it was full of dead things and madmen, like the pictures on my dad's scary videos. That kind of stuff made my insides squirm and threaten to erupt buckets of puke. But Bernice had the tickets and me by the hand, and she was dragging me along and wouldn't stop. What was I supposed to do? Sit down and cry? I'd look like a baby, and Bernice would laugh. It was the first time she'd talked to me, so I didn't want that. Instead, I let her lead me to that dirty, gray building with the gargoyle-covered, finger-like spires, which rose into the cloudless, midday sky like a giant, concrete hand waiting to grab us. My feet dragged. The ground felt like quicksand. But Bernice kept me out by moving fast, getting us to the looming mansion, safe and sound. I said nothing when she handed the tickets to the bored-looking teenager wearing a Raiders of the Lost Ark t-shirt, who was manning the booth. I said nothing when he complained we were too young, but it was okay if we really weren't scared. I said nothing when Bernice told him our parents said it was fine and pulled me through the thick sheets of plastic that hung like strips of flesh in the open door. I could still feel Dad's hand on my shoulder, nudging me on like he had towards Bernice. It was like I was being carried by that same momentum as I stepped forward into the darkness. And then, there I was, in a haunted house in Pleasure Beach, in Blackpool, holding hands with a girl from Northern Ireland. And I couldn't really believe this was me. Because if there was one thing I hated more than monsters, it was girls. Or at least, that's what I thought. Just a few minutes earlier, I'd been eating a burger at a white plastic picnic table on the veranda of the theme park family restaurant, sitting on a wobbly chair and slurping Coke while acting out a battle with my Star Wars toys. That's when I spotted the girl from our hotel, watching me from her seat a few tables away. It made me splutter Coke all over my Goonies t-shirt, because I hadn't expected to see anyone I knew here, so I hadn't been holding back on the sound effects. I tried not to go red as I looked away, sliding Vader and Luke into my lap. But I was glowing with embarrassment, so I failed. Like me, she was eating lunch with her family at one of the flimsy tables crammed into the packed restaurant courtyard. Like me, she was also trying to entertain herself while her parents babbled on about nothing, taking forever to finish eating and wasting precious attraction riding time. Except she was doing it in the less embarrassing way of juggling tennis balls. I knew her name was Bernice because that's what her sisters called her in the hotel lounge every evening, where I read Spider-Man comics, and she juggled. She made those balls go so fast, it was hard not to sneak a glance. She never even dropped one, and mostly, she wasn't even paying attention to what she was doing. I tried not to care. I tried not to think she was cool, with her straw-colored hair tied up in pigtails and those freckles on her nose that were kind of cute. But she kept catching me watching, which was annoying. It made her stupid. Older sisters giggle, whisper in her ear, and laugh. I knew they were talking about me. It made my cheeks tingle and burn, so I had to get up and leave the room. I always looked back as I did. and she was always staring after me. And now she'd seen me playing with my Star Wars toys. And for some reason, I felt really dumb. I didn't want to look at her again, with my red face and coke-stained shirt. But my head wouldn't stop, and when it turned, I got a horrible surprise. Bernice wasn't at her table anymore. She was standing right there beside mine, a tennis ball clutched in each hand. "Hey, my ma'am gave me tickets for a ride. Are you coming?" "What? Are you coming on a ride with me? I'm bored." "Go on, Kev," my dad said, nudging me out of my seat and pushing me towards her. Luke and Vader fell from my knees and hit the flagstones. "You kids go ride the Chair O planes. We'll be finished when you get back, and we'll do another roller coaster." I didn't have time to retrieve my toys, and I didn't want to be seen doing it anyway. They were my favorite ones, and I didn't want to lose them. But suddenly, Bernice's eyes and smile seemed more important. She stuffed her tennis balls into the pockets of her jacket, then grabbed me by the hand, and we were off, weaving our way through the tables and crowds out of the restaurant. Her sisters staring after us, sticking their tongues out and making kissy noises with their lips. And that was that. Except Bernice didn't want to go on the Chair O planes. And now I was in what looked like the dirtiest of dungeons, with plastic skeletons jiggling on the walls, dim red bulbs barely illuminating the hall, and the sound of recorded screams filling the air. My heart pounded like it was trying to break free, my breath catching with each shadow that stretched from the walls. The darkness seemed to tug at my limbs, squeezing tighter with every screech. I didn't like the plastic vampire sucking on the neck of a mannequin. I didn't like the wax werewolf with its snout stuck in the entrails of a scarecrow. I didn't like the life-size, glowering Jack the Ripper, blocking our path with his blood-stained knife. It wasn't just that. The whole place stank of mothballs and mold, a damp smell that reminded me of Gran's house when we'd gone to clear it out after she died. That same scent of damp or death. I wasn't sure which had stuck with me after just an hour in her house a year before. And it was back now, stronger than ever. And the air didn't just smell bad. It felt bad, like a horrible weight pressing down on me, squeezing the oxygen from my lungs, like Vader using the Force to crush a throat. I hated it, every bit, but Bernice loved it all. She squealed in delight at every discovery, pulling me through the halls at breakneck speed, barely pausing at each horrific sight before barreling us on to the next one, which was good in a way, as I didn't want to be there longer than necessary, but bad in another way, because I'd barely recovered from one scare before another leapt out. Frankenstein's monster staring wide-eyed on a table, blood chilling. A trio of witches at a smoking cauldron full of bones. Nerve-wracking. A pack of rabid dogs with drooling teeth. Terrifying. And let's not talk about the clown. I tried not to show I was afraid. I mimicked her shoulders bobbing and her arms swinging when she laughed and joked around and agreed the scary things were really cool. When she playfully pushed me towards the creature from the Black Lagoon, I made sure my intended yelp came out a giggle. When she said, grabbed my hand, and told me she was scared of Norman Bates, I bravely tightened my grip and said it was fine. I was glad it was dark, because that meant she couldn't see the expressions on my face, or how my eyes were squinting most of the time. I was gladder still when we rounded a final corner and saw the word exit. We were almost out. It had seemed like an age, but was probably only 5 minutes. Somehow, I'd made it without peeing my pants, and she had no reason to think I was a baby. With luck, she might even have forgotten Star Wars, and that's when it all went wrong. My ball, she gasped, releasing my hand to search in both her pockets. I lost one of my balls. Oh no, I replied, looking at the floor, hoping I'd find it. When did you lose it? I don't know, Bernice snapped, knocking me against the rickety wall as she pushed past. That's a stupid question. If I knew that it wouldn't be lost, I'm going to find it. She didn't wait for me to answer. Didn't wait at all. Just ran back into the corridor we'd come out of and disappeared. Bernice, I shouted, and my face tingled when I said her name aloud. Wait! She didn't. I stared at the corner she'd turned, hoping to hear her call back, listening for a trace of her, even her footsteps. But the wails from the speakers, the mistakes we've made. Content, warning, some swearing. The only problem with breaking into your neighbor's house is if someone else beats you to it. The Mastersons are gone for the month, summering in Fiji or Acapulco, or wherever people go when they're filthy rich and can afford to flaunt it by using words like summering. Before leaving, they'd asked me to watch their house. For free, of course. I smiled and told them they had nothing to worry about. It wasn't until their blue Bugatti sped down our dead-end street that I finally uncrossed the fingers hiding behind my back. Burglary 101. A good heist is all about patience. For 2 weeks now, I've spent night after sweaty July night sequestered in my stuffy attic, with my telescope trained on the Masterson house, their backyard swimming pool, their organic vegetable garden, their novelty chicken mailbox. Think Rear Window. Only I'm not as handsome as James Stewart. Why wait so long? Because breaking into someone's house the first week they're on vacation is so predictable. And the second week, even less subtle. But the third week, no one ever suspects that third week, which is probably why, right now, during the middle of the third week, as I'm zipping up my black coveralls and adjusting my ski mask, as I'm stooping down to peer through my telescope, which has become a worse habit for me than day drinking, I can feel my heart free fall its way to the basement. Across the street, the shadow of a person creeps toward my neighbor's veranda. It's almost midnight. Everything is dark outside, like a chocolate cake when you don't bake it right, and the person shines a dim light in front of them. I hold my breath as they reach the door's smart lock. Their fingers bounce around the keypad with all the dexterity of a fat kid in a confectionery shop. Then the numbers light up and the door swings open and they slip inside the house. I wait a few more minutes, expecting to see a light bulb spark to life in one of the windows. When the place remains unlit, I grab my cell phone and a black hefty bag, and then I'm off, gliding across my house to the front door. Think risky business, only I'm not as smooth as Tom Cruise. I'll be honest with you. When I arrive at the Mastersons, fulfilling my promise to watch their house is the furthest thing from my mind. Really, I just don't want whoever's inside to take all the good shit before I get a chance. The smart lock keypad awaits my touch. My fingers move with all the dexterity of a fat kid running a mile. But the numbers still brighten, and the door swings open. Coaxed by the passcode that I'd obtained after several months of attic telescoping. Inside, the house is as dark and chocolate cakey as outside. The scent of vanilla lingers in the air, sprayed every 15 minutes via one of the house's 1,000 automatic air fresheners. From the kitchen comes the sound of a cabinet being opened, wine glasses clinking. Using my phone's flashlight, I make my way toward the noise and hope whoever's in there hasn't yet discovered Mrs. Masterson's 60-piece bone china dinner set. I'm not sure what exactly you're supposed to say to someone who's hunched over and dumping a whole drawer of silverware into a burlap sack. So I aim my flashlight at their back and settle for a classic. Hi, how's it going? Nice and casual, not too confrontational, with a hint of politeness. Maybe I am as smooth as Tom Cruise. My words come as the last knife in the drawer hits the bottom of the sack. In an instant, the person drops both drawer and sack, grabs something from their waist, clicks a button. Blue light appears like magic. A thin strand of electricity crackles to life. Pointing the taser gun at me, she shouts, "Put your hands up, and don't fucking move." I'll be honest with you. I've always thought people who talk about love at first sight were full of it. But now, standing there in front of this woman, because there's no doubt the voice belongs to a woman, I get what they mean. Think of the most beautiful woman you've seen. Sandra Bullock, probably. Then imagine her standing there, pointing a stun gun at you in your neighbor's kitchen. legs like a desert oasis, curves like a rainbow, brown hair flowing down her back as she straightens her trigger finger. Because that's exactly what this woman is like. At least, I imagine so. She's wearing a black latex catsuit and a matching ski mask that make her look formless in the veil of night, even in the taser's blue glow. Not 1 inch of skin showing. But sometimes, a voice is all you need to really know someone. That's how all my previous relationships have started, with a voice. And those were nice, while they lasted. Whoa, 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 I say, taking a few steps back and turning off my phone's flashlight to show her I'm harmless. I come in peace. Who are you? The words bubble like acid rain. My feet take another step back without asking my brain. The taser is still aimed at my chest. I'm the Mastersons' neighbor. I point vaguely in the direction of my house. She starts to close one eye like she's about to open fire, so I add, and believe it or not, I'm here to do the same thing you're doing. Slowly, finally, she lowers her weapon, so now it's aimed at my crotch. It's a small victory. I take what I can get these days. I want her to trust me, so I run my hand along the wall in search of the light switch. If she could only see the hefty bag in my hand, she'd know where we stand. At last, the switch pricks my thumb, and all at once, we're bathed in pure white light. Cut that shit off, she hisses. And it's like Jesus himself said the words. They sound so beautiful. And so is she, probably. But the light switch clicks, and it's dark again. She looks out the window, swivels her head from end to end of the sidewalk. Then she taps a button on her taser, and the blue crackling is gone, replaced by a regular flashlight, which she shines directly in my eyes. Are you trying to get me caught? Sorry. Unbelievable, she mutters, and crouches to pick up her burlap sack, leaving the silverware drawer on the floor. The sliver of moonlight from the window makes her look like an angel. An angel who's approaching the 60-piece bone china collection with my name on it. I rap on the wall twice, and it works. She stops, turns to face me. The moonlight reveals only the left side of her ski mask. Look, I think we got off on the wrong foot, I say, peeling off my own mask with one hand and offering a truce with the other. I'm Mac, by the way. She stares at my proffered hand, like she doesn't want to contract whatever form of leprosy I have. The night air is a blanket, heavy and warm around us, filled with the songs of crickets and cicadas. We stand there, listening to the house groan under our feet. Above our heads, the ski mask feels like a dumbbell in my hand. This is usually the part where you tell me your name. No, the woman says, arcing her taser flashlight across the adjoining living room. She marches to the baby grand piano in the corner, no doubt trying to devise a way to wheel it into the night. Okay, okay, I'll just call you Jenny, I say, following her. That was my last girlfriend's name, which is information that was supposed to stay in my head before my mouth sabotaged me. But now it's too late. The words bridge the space between us like a Chinese finger trap, binding us together as accomplices. She pauses, one hand poised atop a stack of outdated sheet music. Beethoven or Bach or Mariah Carey. Turning around, she stares at me behind her ski mask and opens her glossy mouth. It doesn't matter that she showed up to a robbery wearing lipstick. It doesn't matter that she almost tased me 2 minutes ago. My heartbeat quickens all the same, and my blood rushes to places where it probably shouldn't be. Slowly, finally, she says, "Shut up, Max," and dumps the music into her sack, Mariah Carey and all. And it doesn't even matter that she got my name wrong. She could read the yellow pages, cover to cover, and I would listen forever, falling asleep and waking up to the sound of her voice every day. So, yes, I shut up. We shuffle to separate corners of the living room and inspect our potential treasures. And let me tell you, it's the longest 5 minutes of silence in my life. But then, as I'm snatching a handful of angelfish from the Masterson's aquarium and tossing them into my garbage bag, curiosity creeps up on me like it's driving a free candy van. And I can't help but to ask, how did you get past the smart lock anyway? It took me weeks of watching with my telescope to get the numbers. I cringe hearing the word meeks, a hasty overcorrection, when I opted not to tell her how long my spying has actually been going on. Jenny scoffs from across the room, where she's trying desperately to pry a taxidermied deer head from its throne above the mantelpiece. Really? You couldn't figure out 1234? She turns and gives me a dismissive shake of her head. They're boomers. It's not frickin' rocket science. Another candy van question slips out. Why are you doing this? She sighs and stops tugging, but keeps her hands on the antlers. I'm just taking what I'm owed. That's all, she says. Her voice is different than before, softer maybe. I mean, seriously, these people can go to Acapulco for a month, but they can't afford to pay their employees a decent wage. So it was Acapulco, I murmur. You know something? I'd probably be home right now watching Netflix if Ed weren't so fucking stingy. Whether she means Mr. Edwin Masterson or Mrs. Edna Masterson, it's impossible to say. And I don't feel it's my place to ask. I see. What about you? Jenny has given up on the deer head, opting for the floor-to-ceiling bookshelf instead. They aren't paying you right either. I could tell her the truth, that the Mastersons have never wronged me, have always invited me to their cookouts and their Christmas parties, that I'm just a guy with too much time on his hands, all the time in the world, and something to prove, that I'm invading someone else's life tonight to try to find some meaning in my own, that I'm a spineless, indecisive loser, and I'm destined to let the world walk all over me. That last one is what my previous girlfriend told me anyway. Old Jenny. But that was 3 years ago. People can change in that amount of time, right? I would never have thought of breaking into this house 3 years ago. If that's not change, I don't know what is. New Jenny is staring at me, awaiting my answer. Yeah, something like that, I tell her, plunging my hand back into the aquarium. Figures. She flings a tattered Gutenberg Bible into her burlap sack. Hypocrites. 10. Burglary 201. Always use the toilet before a heist. When I return from the bathroom, couldn't have been in there more than 5 minutes. The living room is abandoned. From the kitchen comes the rattle of a teacup and a saucer. And then I know this woman is no angel. In the kitchen, Jenny stands on her tiptoes to reach the top of the cabinet. She curls a few fingers around a piece of Mrs. Masterson's bone china, a white teacup with floral patterning. It is the penultimate item in the cabinet. What the hell are you doing? I say, as she lowers her body, cup in hand. My voice, louder than expected, ricochets off the now empty walls like a pinball. She startles, then slips her present into her sack. A reverse Santa Claus. What does it look like? You're taking my bone china set is what it looks like. Jenny shrugs and points to the lone piece in the cabinet. A plain-looking white saucer with gold trim. All yours. Have at it. No. I grab my soggy, hefty bag from its spot by the aquarium, stretch it as wide as it'll go. Give me half. The air freshener on the wall vomits vanilla mist as Jenny cocks her head. So, she says, nodding at the cabinet. Do you want it or not? Half? I demand. She snorts and shakes her head. Done with me. Hauling her sack, she troops down the hallway toward the bathroom. I have to stop myself from grabbing her arm. The equation is simple arithmetic. She has a taser. I don't. The saucer is an orphan in its cupboard, waiting for someone to take pity on it. It's cool to the touch in my longing fingertips. My hefty bag is still gaping like a hungry, hungry hippo. But I slide the saucer in my breast pocket for safekeeping. The toilet flushes, and Jenny emerges from the bathroom, still dragging her riches. She frowns when she sees me standing there. You know, I think I misjudged you, Jenny. You're not an angel at all. You know that? Her laugh is like the curtains bulging from her sack, velvety and hideous. Oh, I'm not an angel? Breaking news? More at 11. Her taser flashlight falls on my trash bag. What? You think you're some kind of saint? These people aren't my neighbors. I'm supposed to be watching the house, actually, I confess. That's really why I'm here. Mr. Masterson put his faith in me. Well, you're doing a great job. Jenny opens a hallway closet and inspects Mrs. Masterson's collection of mink coats as though she's in a bookstore, contemplating life's hardest decision. Paperback or hardcover? Let me know if you need a letter of recommendation. My face feels like it's summering in Acapulco. The novelty of Jenny's sarcasm has worn off. Now it leaves me grinding my teeth. Look, I'm gonna step outside, I tell her, tapping the imaginary vape pen in my pocket. I need a smoke break. 10 minutes, max, Jenny commands, with all the authority of a Walmart manager. I'm still wondering if that meant maximum, or if she'd simply mispronounced my name again when I stumble out into the night. A hot, gentle breeze greets me on the sidewalk, a gift from the passing cars on the next block. My house sits across the street, pale and lonely, and devoid of bone china. The telescope in the attic is pointed directly at me, watching. The Mastersons' novelty chicken mailbox taunts me. They are all waiting for me to do what it is I actually came out here for. Why not? Why not fulfill my promise? Just so she can walk away with my dinner set while I get to drag some dead fish home. It only takes a few taps of my phone. Then a voice on the other end comes through, high-pitched and much too perky. 911. What's your emergency? Hi, how's it going? Yeah, hey, my house is being broken into right now, I say, and pray this woman doesn't know what Mr. Masterson sounds like as I give her the address. She's got a mountain of questions for me high as Everest, and I listen to myself answer them. Only I'm talking on autopilot because I'm too busy thinking about the two Jennys, old and new. How old Jenny would have called me spineless for what I'm doing now, turning someone in while being part of the problem. How new Jenny came here tonight because she wanted to right a wrong, because she believed in something. At least one of us has a good reason, and that gets me thinking. She can't be all bad, right? Maybe not an angel, but not all bad. She did let me have the last saucer. Maybe we just started off on the wrong foot. Maybe we could get to know each other better. Maybe then she'd even tell me her name. The operator is still talking a mile a minute when I interrupt. Hold on, I think. I think there are 2 people in the house now. Yes, another one just joined. And when I feed her the Masterson's address again, I whisper, "Please come quickly." But I'll be honest with you. That last part is for dramatic effect, just to see how long it'll take someone to show up to a fancy place like this. 5 minutes? 10, what do I care? I have all the time in the world. The operator tells me it won't be long, that they're sending someone right now to come help. She asks me to stay calm and remain where I am. So I stroll to the front door. I can hear Jenny's voice before my feet touch the porch, cussing one of the Eds out as she lugs her sack across the marble floor. Her bone china jingles in the night like a plea, begging my lone saucer to partake. I retrieve it from my pocket, give it a squeeze, and step inside, ready to see the mistakes we've made. Hoodwinked. The only thing worse than tracing a witness 5 years after is to find out he has forgotten all about the crime, or at least the bits that matter. But Detective Syed was no greenhorn. He smiled at the 19-year-old who was sitting across the table devouring his second plate of chicken kafriel. So, is the chicken tangy enough? Yes, Detective. Thank you for buying me lunch. Daniel D'Souza grinned, his cheeks still plump with the spicy treat tucked in. Not at all. Thanks for agreeing to meet me here. Detective Syed swirled the sparkling water, then took another swig. It was a hot April afternoon, and Baga Beach looked bare. I know it's hard for you to talk about it, but what you can tell me can save a life. The fork fell into the green sauce, and the young man picked it back up. He wiped the corners of his mouth with the paper napkin Britos had stacked at every table, and met Detective Syed's gaze. Sir, I was just 14 at the time, and was visiting my uncle, and helped him in his gallery that sold souvenirs and other knickknacks. Detective Syed completed the statement, and cataloged the antiques. It was off-season, and he had very few customers walking in. So, you used to stay till the shop closed in the evening? Yes. And what time would it close? All shops in Panaji close around 8 p.m. I thought you knew it, the youngster snorted. So, you closed at 8 p.m. every evening? Yes. No exceptions? Not any that I can recall? Well, on the 30th of April, 2016, it was open at least till 9:30 p.m. Afterwards, the CCTV blanked out. Oh, it was the last day of the month. Maybe it was open for stock taking, staying open late at night after a whole day of no business? Detective Syed cocked his left eyebrow. Detective, can I leave now? I'm not feeling too well, and I can't recall much. Daniel tried to slide out of his bamboo chair. The detective's eyes held steady. Daniel, I have not even started asking anything yet. And you know I'm going to get to it one way or the other. So, why don't you help me out here? I can be of no help to you, Detective. I shouldn't even have come here. It was a mistake. Daniel got up and hobbled on the slippery sand. Detective Syed cleared his throat and said in a voice that rose above the waves that crashed outside, "We went through the old CCTV footage. It shows someone coming out of the shop at 9:30 p.m. Daniel stopped in his tracks and turned. He walked back to the table and growled. You know, Detective, I was a minor at the time and can't be charged with anything. True, but you could have been sent to a juvenile detention center. Could have been, but wasn't. Wait, for what? Daniel's face turned red. For whatever you didn't confess to," Detective Syed said in an even tone as he gestured for Daniel to sit down. "We are not here to talk about it, though. We are here to discuss the footage we got from Tanishq Jewelry 3 days ago." Daniels sported the same look as the fish kept on the ice at the entrance. "So, Daniel, how about you sit down and I'll order you a bibinka?" "No, thanks. I'm full. What is it that you want to know?" "Daniel, on the night of 30th April 2016, between 9 to 10 p.m., robbers drilled a hole in the back wall of Swarna Jewelers and hauled the stuff worth INR 8 crore with them. As you already know, it's next to Pablo's gallery. You didn't hear anything?" "No. As my uncle said at the time, I was not there," Daniel rasped through a clenched jaw, "which we know now is not true." "How can you say that? I'm sure many own a hoodie of the same brand, but I'm sure they will not be wearing one on a humid April night." "And who said anything about a hoodie?" "What hoodie?" Daniel countered. Detective Syed let out a chuckle. He knew it was the best antidote for teenage bravado. "Okay, the same one that the CCTV outside Tanishq captured 3 days ago. This one should be easier to remember." Daniel's face turned pale. "What is the connection between the two? You tell me." The detective parleyed in a calm voice. "Okay, I was helping my uncle at the store the night Swarna Jewelers was looted. But I swear, we didn't hear a thing. We had almost finished when a man in a dark blue hoodie turned up at the store asking for a lighter. He was wearing shades, and I found that suspicious. He didn't realize I was watching him as he took out his wallet and dropped a gun. My uncle at the register could not see it, but I did." The vase in my hand fell, and the next moment, the gun was pointed at me. "Okay, what happened next?" "I can't remember what exactly happened." Daniel's eyes were like the floodgates about to be opened. Detective Syed leaned back on his tubby chair, rocked the back of his head in his knitted hands, and cajoled. "Take a deep breath and try again. That bibinka is still on the offer?" "I think my uncle begged him to spare me. The man asked us to turn off the CCTV and stay in the shop, and left." "Was that what happened?" "Yes." "And you left the city the next day to return after 5 years?" "Yes." "Only the new CCTV footage we found from Tanishq across the street tells a different story." Detective Syed leaned forward and drummed his fingers on the table. "Which is?" Daniel sniggered. "The man in the hoodie never walked out of the gallery." Daniel's eyes went wide. "But you said you saw him walk out." "No. It was a 14-year-old who walked out wearing a dead man's hoodie." Daniel gulped air. Detective Syed half shut his eyes, scratched his chin, and continued, "and walked back into Tanishq store 3 days ago. And quite possibly other places across Goa before that. I have a theory. He was tracked down by the fellow robbers of the dead man. They made him an offer he could not refuse. Be a part of their gang, or go to juvie for murder." Daniel's face went blank. He whispered in a trembling voice, "Nice theory. I came back as I got admission into a college in the city, which is a nice cover-up. Daniel, you don't have to tell me what happened at the gallery that night. And I think I know the reason why you wore the same hoodie. Which is? Supposing your theory is correct, you wanted to be rescued. Is that a possibility? Daniel's eyes begged, still too scared to be hopeful. Yes, if you can help nab the gang and finish eating bibinka